Today we are here to get serious on talking about training because training is one of the most overlooked factors when it comes to transforming your physique and feeling really damn confident in your direction. A lot of people just miss out on what's there to be gained from it. So, hope you enjoy today's part 2 with Luke. Go back and listen to part 1, which we covered all things nutrition, and then we will go on to the myths for part 3.
My pants don't fit. I must have gotten bigger. Then you measure your legs again. You're like, oh, well, my legs are the same size. Fuck. My husband did the laundry the other day. Must have put my pants in on too hot of a cycle for the dryer, and I just shrank them.
I kind of don't even like the whole nutritional periodization term. I think it's more so fat loss periodization because you are either in a fat loss phase or not in a fat loss phase. To me, the best thing you can do with your nutrition for building your best physique is to have it in a place where you are primed to push your best performance in the gym.
Yeah. Well, and to say that's where I will differ a little bit. It just, man, because I do agree with that, but it's like you also have to look at people who don't give a shit about performance in the gym, because that can be an issue too, right? But so sometimes you have to go through a different angle. You're like, okay, so because and I'll give you a story. Like when we first bought our gym, and we went in and we took it over from the previous owner, and like people will come to our gym. They initially, it's weird because now 5 years later we're seeing a really big difference in culture, but it took 5 years to build that momentum. And I came in, I'm like, okay, so we do have group classes because it's like one coach with like 5 to 6 people, so they're small group classes, so there's still a lot of like one-on-one stuff. And I wrote all these beautiful periodized programs, beautiful, same stuff I would write for people, personal training and online and all that. And people were getting crazy strong. Like we had one guy, when we tested him, he had a 75 kilo deadlift, and 12 weeks later he pulled 150. And I'm like freaking out. I'm high-fiving him, and he looks at me and he goes, I don't really care about that shit. And I'm like, you just put 75 kilos on your deadlift in 12 weeks and you don't care? He goes, no, I just want to lose some weight. And I went, okay, sometimes. So if we say like we want to drive performance, sometimes we also need to clarify what performance means. And so for people like that, performance may be, well, more energy, better sleep, better sex, right? Getting up and down stairs easier. So performance can be any number of things. Doesn't necessarily have to be like having PRs on your list, which I think you should. But the unfortunate fact is some people just don't even give a shit about that, which I think is sad. And we should like, because the whole point of lifting weights is to put muscle on or to retain muscle and to get stronger. Like that's the goal. It's not to lose weight. It's to put on more muscle and it's to get stronger. Like that's what you should do. And I apologize for anybody gym pop here, but the general population out there, they're pathetically weak. They are pathetically weak. And I think they just don't understand that. Like, I'll go in and guys will go, I don't want to be as strong as you. I don't want to be as big as you. And I'm like, I know, because you won't train as hard as I do and you won't stay on the diet. Like, I know you don't want to be at the level I'm at, but you're so fucking far away from that. You don't have to worry about it. Like, I've been training for over 35 years. Like, you got a long way to go to get to that level, but I'm trying to get you out of this level of like being incredibly incapable of doing anything strong and try to make you somewhat capable, right? Like somewhat capable. And for whatever reason, the zombie apocalypse or whatever the fuck we're training for, like some of these people are so weak that they blow their back out sneezing. It's like, come on, man. So it's like, and I think a lot of people will look at you and they'll say, especially like your lifts, your big competition lifts if you've done, which is a completely mind-blowing weight for your body weight. Like if you tell people, when I'm lecturing in front of people and I tell people how your body weight to deadlift ratio, they don't believe me. I have to show them videos of you pulling what you're pulling, like you pulling 185, 190 on your deadlift, because they don't believe me. And I'm like, no, this is true. And especially for Gym Pop, like if you talk to my mom, if I tried to tell my mom about that lift, and I'd have to change it into pounds because she's American. So she's freedom units. She wouldn't believe me. She would think that that's only something you see on like the Avengers and the Incredible Hulk. And then do you know what the next statement my mom would say? Because my mom would be I would consider her like the pinnacle. If you had Wikipedia general population female, you'd see a picture of my mom there. It's like she would look at that and be like, I don't want to get that strong. Like, I know. So like a lot of your female clients that look at you and be like, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to go that far. Trust, as coaches, we know you don't, but
you're not going to get there overnight.
No, the gap is so far. You have no idea how far it is. At my biggest, when I was 123, 124 kilos, and I was still like between 15 and 19% body fat. I was huge. People would come in to train with me and they were like, I don't want to do what you do. I'm like, I know. And these would be guys who could barely squat their body weight. And I'm like, bro, I squat 700 pounds. Like, I know. I squat 318 kilos. Like, I know you don't want to do that. I'm not trying to get you to do that. But right now, my grandmother is stronger than you and she's dead. I'm just trying to get you a little bit stronger, okay?
But it's so true. Among all of this nutrition discussion and seed oils and all this bullshit going on, people are ignoring the training part. Yeah. And you can't look at people's results physically or even like lifting wise, but physically now and ask yourself, how did they train? How do they train? For how long have they been doing it? And wait, you said it took 5 years to change the gym culture in your gym. What I hear is it took 5 years to start making results. And then the same with Ali. There was a back and forth for 3 years. It took 3 years to start seeing real results. It's like things could have been so much faster if you had that, but that is where you learn. So this is kind of where I want us to save people the pain, because wait, you put up a photo of a botchy Photoshop in an F45 setting, and this kind of alludes to what I want you to talk about, because lean muscle is strong muscle. You won't train as hard as I did, you said, and that was still 35 years on. Because you need to get stronger for the lean muscle you want. And I agree. Most people, they can, like, people start off with like 5 kilo dumbbells and they're doing that for ages. It's like, this, like, to get the lean physique that you want, that's going to require a lot of muscle, which is going to require strongness. Yes, you want to lose the body fat. If you have a lot of body fat to start with, then you can do both at the same time. So let's try to get you stronger in the meantime. Yeah. But then there comes a point where you don't have as much body fat to lose. And this is where training for the physique becomes really important.
Massively.
We touched on this at the start. Massively. Well, you did. Tension. You need to know what failure is. You need to know what it's like and what it feels like to train really freaking hard and actually fail a set, maybe on a machine so that it's safe. You need to push into that discomfort and go beyond the burn. Training for the physique also, I would say, you can't do that if you haven't got a solid technique foundation first, because you can't just build on something that's shaky. As soon as you get something nice and solid, you can push that thing to bloody the cows come home, and you're not going to break yourself the same way that you would if it was on something you haven't yet built solid form on. Which I know you would agree with the fact that most people have a botchy hinge. So they deadlift, they RDL, they squat. Even in the squat, you'd need some form of hinging because you're going to hinge back to squat down. So let's talk about that and why building the foundation first is really important. But at the same time, it doesn't matter what you do and what program you follow, even if it's freaking from the best hypertrophy coach in the world. You're not going to get hypertrophy, aka the body that you want, if you yourself are not pushing to intensity, which an F45 gym isn't going to do, a training app isn't going to do. A coach can help guide you there because they can tell you to push harder. Let's go from there.
The thing is, like, when you look at like things like F5 and training apps, there's nothing inherently wrong with them, but they could be wrong for the client at this stage of where they're at. Because even like stuff like CrossFit, if you're gonna jump into like these really big classes where there's one coach and 30 people, and you don't know what you're doing, you have to go through a period of time where you actually can do what you're supposed to be doing without needing a lot of supervision. So if you're more advanced, then that class may be okay for you, but you're not going to build a lot of muscle in F45. It ain't going to happen because it's basically cardio with weights. And you're probably just going to get hurt. Like, I used to love F45 when I was doing manual therapy because all my clients came from F45. They destroy their backs deadlifting with weight they couldn't handle under fatigue. They would do plyos and roll their ankle. I had a constant influx of injured people from F45. It's how I built a business doing manual therapy. But like if you beginners need to start at the beginning, they need to have an entry point, and a big class like that with low supervision and trying to learn how to use technique under fatigue is not the place to learn how to have good technique and how to do things correctly. That's a personal trainer, semi-private, small group classes like what we do at the IOPC. That's where that's more appropriate, because one coach can't train 30 people at the same time. If you go to these big classes, the only thing that coach is realistically doing is yelling and motivating you and telling you when to switch stations. They're not actually training you. Group classes are not personal training. They're a cheap way for you to get in and do something. I mean, there's no difference between that and yoga. If you go to yoga, at least in yoga, the yogi is walking around and putting their hands on people and all that. It's a slow class. It's not fast paced like a workout program. So they can have time to go to each student and adjust them before they move to the next posture. In a big training class, you don't have that. Like you have a bunch of people throwing weights around, like having seizures all over the place, and the coach is not even really usually coaching or doing any technique work with people. So it's not a great place for beginners to start. A beginner needs to start at the beginning, which means you have to learn how to squat. Then you have to learn how to squat with heavier weight and how to keep the ship together. Because every time you add weight, the movement becomes slightly different. You have to learn how to overhead press, deadlift, use machines. Like anything that you're going to use, you have to be taught how to do that. It's if you were really serious about swimming, like you wouldn't just jump in the pool and try to swim. You would probably take a class, hire somebody to teach you how to swim effectively, because you would never get good at swimming. You'd just be really good at not drowning, but you would never actually learn how to swim properly. And squatting is the same way, deadlifting, bench pressing, all this stuff. Training with weights is the same thing. You have to have good qualified instruction.
Yeah, and this is exactly the thing. You need to get that technique right first. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the start with being fucking patient, because amazing transformation takes time. Yeah. I would also argue that enhancing a physique to that level, the more that you can build up your training capacity, your training, I don't mean training volume and just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks, but building up what you can do in that period of time, like lifting more weight for more reps, being able to recover faster. Like the more training capacity that you have, the easier it is to get lean, to stay lean, yeah. And everything just catapults from there, which all starts with getting strong as fuck, which can't happen until you get the technique right first. And technique takes time. And if you're changing your program every 4 weeks and changing your exercises every 4-5 weeks completely, you're not progressively overloading, even if the numbers on the logbooks are going up, because it's a completely different exercise. And I know you also agree with this one as well, where if someone is stuck in a plateau, they tend to think that doing more will get them out of it. So what does smarter training look like for someone who's not seeing the changes they want?
And look, plateaus are normal. Plateaus in weight gain, plateaus in fat loss, like plateaus in strength. Like that's going to happen. Now, those plateaus are going to happen more often the more experienced you are. So if you think about this, guys who do Olympic weightlifting, that you couldn't find anything that requires more precision and technique than doing Olympic weightlifting. There's no sport known to man where you need that type of technique and rhythm and timing and precision, at least when we're talking about strength sports. You can't just start doing the movement. You have to learn how to do the movement in the most efficient, best way possible. As a beginner, you will get decent enough the first year and a half, and you'll see your strength go really, like it'll go gangbusters once you understand the movements. But once you get reasonably good at that and reasonably strong, your success is going to slow down. It becomes really frustrating. So it's like, let's say we'll take a guy. We'll take, like, for myself, like maybe I started doing Olympic weightlifting and I can snatch 50 kilos. You're going to get to 80 really quick. You could probably get to 100 pretty quick. Going from 100 kilos to 120 is probably going to take 3 to 4 times that length of time. Going from 120 to 150 is going to take, again, an additional 3, 4, 5 times that time, right? So it's like it's a patient. It's everything's you got to have patience for this. This is a long-term thing. You're not you're going to get beginner gains, which are really great, but those aren't going to last forever. So you have to dig in and use that beginner time to learn your technique, because if you've gone from the couch to the gym, you're going to get really strong in relation to your sedentary self really quickly. It's good to focus on a handful of key fundamental exercises or fundamental movements, and not have like training ADD where you're constantly switching your stuff just because you're bored of the movement. And I'm not saying that it's not beneficial to change exercises, because it can be, but in those early stages, if you're going to make a decision to change an exercise, make it an exercise that's just different enough, right? So it's like, if I'm learning how to high bar back squat, great. I can do a high bar back squat with a high heel elevation. That's going to make it really easy for me to learn a squatting pattern. And then if I'm getting bored, use a lower elevation, because it's the same movement, but we've now made it slightly different. And because you've lowered the hill, you're going to be able to use more weight. And then when you get bored of that, go to feet flat. Then when you get bored of that, go to a lower bar. So you're still doing a squat pattern. It's just slightly different and improving your mechanical leverages as you move through these. So you could do a year and a half of just squats and just going from high heel to foot flat to low bar to box squat. At least it's all still related to a squat pattern. And then you would have learned like 8 different variations of squats, and you'd be really fucking good at squatting. But what you don't want to do is, well, I'm going to do squat for 4 weeks. I'm bored of this. I'm going to go do leg press. And now you do leg press for 4 weeks and you go, okay, I'm going to go do something else. So you go do a hack squat, and you get bored with that and you go do a different squat. You've now done 4, 5, 6 different squats over the course of 6 months, and you're not good at any of them.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of when I had a complete rant to you on our last call, where I was getting so good at my squats. I got 125 for 3 reps. And then I went with someone who put me onto a program that, even though squats were my goal, completely did not give me my squats. And then I went back to do squats again when I decided, nah, enough with that. And went back to that's when I went back to my proper coaching style. And I was struggling to even get 90 back on that squat. And this is the thing, like, you practice the skill and get good at it. But I wanted to quickly go back into what you mentioned with the plateaus, the things, like, you will see really fast changes at first. And I think this is why people go back to CrossFit, or not CrossFit, go back to F45 and group classes, because you are going to see results when that's your first point of call and you're doing it for the first time, because anything new is going to get you results. So then you're like, if you stay married to it because you think it's working, it feels like hard work. You're burning calories, which isn't a meaning of you actually getting results, but it feels like you're getting results because you got them before and you see it physically. So you keep doing it. But that is where you start missing out on all that could be gained from you actually having smart training, smart programming. And this can be the same with like group programs as well, which I will bring that on at the end. But the deadlifts, I finally am starting to deadlift again. I went from 100 to 125, 130 in the space of a month. To me, that is really freaking fast. To a lot of people, that can seem really slow. Oh, I only put on this much. But that's only because I'm really good at hinging. I'm really good at deadlifting because I've done it before. But most people have to kind of learn these little things that come before the adding of the weights. And then you're going to progress really fast. And then it's going to slow down. And then you're going to get bored. You're going to hate the exercise because it feels like you're not progressing. You're failing. No, you're not. This is the reality of progress. And this is why you need to be patient with yourself, which brings me to why coaching is so important.
Let me explain one thing though, like that 100 to 125, and that's really fast. Like I would say it's really fast too. Like people don't understand that's fucking fast, especially a woman your size doing 100, 125. Now, why would that happen? Well, at one point you were close to a 200 kilo deadlift. So what people need to understand is a lot of this is teaching the brain how to turn muscles on and off at the right times to move your skeleton. So the reason like the reason you can make a jump like that is because you've been there before. So it's still in there. You just have to get the brain to recognize the movement again. And then it goes, oh, I remember this. And now you're putting on like 7.5 kilos per session. It's not necessarily that you got stronger. That strength was already there. You just you pulled out an old MacBook Pro and fired it up and went, oh, hello world. Oh, we're doing this again. Okay, I remember how we do this, because your brain's already learned that pattern, right? So here's a good way of putting it. You have two different categories of how we're learning, right? Or a sequence in how we learn. You have cognitive learning, which is what beginners go through. Like if you wanted me to coach you on how to do a snatch and a clean, even though you've done pulls and you've done deadlifts and you've done back squats, you've done overhead squats, you've done front squats, you're going to have to go through this cognitive learning phase again, because now that you put all those together, basically deadlift to the bar and do an overhead squat and then come up in a front squat, like you have to learn how the sequencing. So during a cognitive phase, which is what every single person will have to do when they begin a new exercise, especially if it's radically different from any other exercise they've done. In the cognitive phase, you actually have to think about what you're doing. So when you're ready to do the lift, you have to approach the bar, and then you have to go, okay, say I'm doing a snatch. So I need a wide grip. So I have to get my hands where they need to be. And then I have to know where to pull my ass down to, where to extend my back to, where to look. Then how do I initiate this? How do I keep the bar closed? What happens when the bar gets to my waist? Well, I got to launch the bar and pull myself under the bar. And so your brain has to go through all these checklists of what it's supposed to do. And they reckon it takes around 3,000 to 5,000 reps to basically program a sequence like that. Right now, athletes will do it faster, but most non-athletes or normal gym pop people, it's going to take you about 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions of an exercise to then be able to approach the bar and just do it, and then switch into what's called the reflexive phase, where you've actually, now the information isn't necessarily stored here. It's also stored in your nervous system, so that it becomes automatic, right? And that's how you know someone who's done the hard yards of learning an exercise or not. That's how I can tell. If I go to a gym, I can tell who knows what they're doing and who doesn't just by watching them do a movement. Because the people that are apprehensive and hesitating and they're kind of choppy in what they're doing, they're still in that cognitive phase. So I'm like, okay, they're still a beginner. They haven't done enough thousands of reps to get this done. Or then you see like me or you will walk into the gym, and let's say I'm doing an incline press, I don't think about it. I get on the bench, I grab the bar, I set, and I go. And then everything looks nice and smooth. But that's the difference between looking at like that beginner cognitive phase of an exercise versus someone who's done that exercise so many times that it's just like riding a bike. So when you went and did your deadlift, that reflexive phase just turned back on, and it was just like riding a bike, except the bike is a deadlift bar.
Yeah, and this is why it's so important to not skip steps. You need to build all of this. Exactly. It's not about the results. It's about building the results, the process there. It's doing the things, getting better at the things, and then doing the things again until it becomes a ritual, like you said. And then it's just chasing more. And I relate this to habits and habit memory, because just like muscle memory, if you've had a habit that you only just developed, you're going to lose that really fast as soon as you get sick. And then it's hard to get back on track again. But if it's something you've been doing for like half of your life, as soon as you get finish your little sick period, you're back to it straight away. It's the same concept. And this is going back to what I wanted to say about coaching and interaction and one-on-one and form videos. Like, this is the shit that creates the physiques that you see online that are like, wow. It's not downloading programs. It's like program design in itself is overwhelming for people. But even when you download programs, people expect radical physique changes. They don't push themselves enough, number one. But then if you get a form video from them, I'm sure you've had people that have done all the downloading apps, and then they finally join your coaching or your group training, and then you see their videos and it's like you just have a puzzled face on you. Like, you need to fix all of these little things, and you're like, you can add probably another 10 kilos to that. And then you start progressing them properly with a strategy not month to month, but like program to program. There's like strategy to the progressions. It's not just random stuff. The other thing I want you to touch on, so there's two little ADHD.
Hold on. Because you got me thinking about saying, and I actually missed, my numbers were off. When you said that, my numbers are off. It actually takes 300 to 500 on average repetitions it takes 3,000 to 5,000 to then reprogram it if you do it the wrong way. And I'm glad you just brought that up about like doing things right from the start, because this is what I'll tell clients, and this is what I teach. It's like, you can either do it the right way or the wrong way when you start. You're going to eventually have to learn how to do it the right way, because if you do it the wrong way, you're probably going to injure yourself. And then people will look at me and they'll say, well, so-and-so Muscle Daddy 1976 on Instagram says that there's no such thing as good form, good technique, and he lifts like garbage. I'm like, yeah, but you have to understand, when you're advanced, you have a lot more wiggle room. Like, you can be advanced and your technique can fall on a big lift and you can still keep things together. If you're a beginner, you don't have that wiggle room. So you're better off being slow and methodical and doing things correctly and earning the right to have slightly bad technique in a lift when it's time to push it.
Thanks, Muscle Daddy, because this is so important. Everyone knows that we call Luke Daddy, but thanks, Muscle Daddy. This is so important, doing it the wrong way. But as a quick aside, many times, because fucking hell, Luke, do you know how many times I get triggered when someone comments on my squat because I have long femurs and I have a lean forward and, oh my God, your back should be, like, no, everyone, no, there's no right technique. I just had to comment on that because people are always like, doesn't your back hurt? No matter how I deadlift, no matter how I squat, the only thing that ever gives me pain are my glutes. Because of my long femurs and that good morning position, my glutes are always the ones that are working the hardest, and they're always the ones that are sore no matter what. I never have a sore back, and you want to know why? Because this guy here that's on this podcast strengthened my back with a lot of, this is where coaching comes in to build you up on the things that need it. He knows that I have long femurs. He knows that my back is going to be the weak link in all of my shit. So what did he do? He programmed me to have a really strong freaking back so that I can do all the things. And this is where it's not skipping the steps. If I skip those steps, I wouldn't be able to load shit the way that I do.
Yeah. And sometimes skipping those steps is different than what you think, right? Because we have steps that we have to do to you said there's no perfect technique. There is perfect technique, but that's different for each person. There's technique that's perfect for you that's going to be different for me because I'm built differently than you, right? Now, and I can get you to squat exactly how I squat, but I have to modify something, right? I can get you to squat. We've squatted straight up and down, but we have to do a modifier to change the mechanics of your body type by like putting a heel lift. You put a heel lift on that somewhat makes you have a longer tibia, so to speak, which then equalizes the tibia to the femur and allows you to move the shin forward more so you can stay more upright. But the problem is, that's also going to pull some strength off the table. So if you want to get a really big squat, if I use some type of tool like a heel lift to get you sitting in a taller position, you're not going to lift as much. So if your goal is to squat as much as possible, we need to put you in the best position for that, which some people are going to look at social media and go, that's a terrible way to squat. No, that's the strongest position for Ruby. That is her perfect technique for this lift. Now, if we wanted to modify that to please all of you, we could put a heel lift on and it would look the way you think a perfect lift should be, but you'd have to pull 20 kilos off the fucking bar.
Actually, to get me upright, you had me doing a cyclist front squat.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it's like that was even less weight.
But the main thing there, a cyclist squat, you got a really big fucking like 30 to 45 degree hill elevation, right? So yeah, you're gonna need you need that, because I wish I should have brought my whiteboard up, but you look at you've got a femur that's this long, and let's say you got a tibia. Let's say you got a femur that's this long, and you got a tibia that this long, right? Of course, your hips are going to go really far back. There's only so far your shin can move forward. So once that shin has moved as far forward as it can, there's nowhere else for it to go. So we can if we put a heel lift that lifts your heel up, that effectively gives you a longer tibia, kind of a fake longer tibia that allows everything to go forward a little bit more. So that actually creates a longer angle at the ankle so that you can actually sit more upright. But you've got this really short torso, really long femurs that require a really extreme hill elevation if you were going to squat like that. But I would also say there's no point in you squatting like that. Like for physique, yeah, if you wanted to bias your quads and bias your knees, yeah. But Like if you want to lift the most amount of weight, you're built to kind of slightly wider, slightly externally rotated, and just accept that you're going to use a lot of your back and ass for that.
Okay, thanks, Muscle Daddy. I almost forgot about why this is so important. So now I have two things I want to touch on. I'm going to say them both. Doing this the wrong way, and then it's going to take even more repetitions to unlearn it, and then you're going to have to learn it all again. So if you go back to the whole, yeah, it took 5 years to start seeing results kind of paradigm, this is the same with your dieting strategies. Because if you keep doing this physique transformation the wrong way and doing your crash dieting, it's going to take so long to unlearn that from your head, because you can't separate physiology from psychology, and your brain is going to keep going to the scale. I'm freaking out, my clothes, this, that, the other. That's going to take so long for you to get out of. I somehow was lucky. I don't know how I did it, and I keep trying to find answers, but I just did it because I could just use performance as the thing that drove me. Ali didn't have that. She wasn't competing in powerlifting, which is why she wasted 3, 4, whatever years doing her little cycle with you. But then the other Muscle Daddy thing is where you mentioned that I could do a fake squat and reduce the weight by like 20, 30 kilos, whatever the fuck. Probably it was like 50 kilos from what I was squatting back then. I see this all the time on Instagram, and it grinds my gears. Put your foot like this on the leg press to get the glute medius, like this to get the glute minimus, like this to get the glute maximus. It's like, how about you just put your feet on the plate the normal way and do it the way that you can lift the most fucking weight, and you're going to get all the fucking glutes because you're lifting the most weight possible. Not
the thing is a leg press is a terrible machine to focus on your glutes. Just stop. You have so many other exercises that can hit the glutes better than the leg press. It's like this bench press. Guys do bench press to get a bigger chest. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but the bench press is not a chest movement. It's a horizontal pressing movement. So you do the bench press to get better at the bench press. It has a side effect that makes your shoulders and your chest and your triceps bigger. But if you wanted to focus primarily on the chest, use things that are primarily chest oriented, like cable flies, pec deck, things that are actually going to be biased towards the chest. By the same token, if you wanted to build bigger quads, and you could use the leg press, right? But what's going to make the quads grow even better? Use the leg press to get better at the leg press, and use a leg extension to isolate the quad and hit the rec fem, since you don't really hit that much on the leg press anyways. If you're going to use the leg press and you want it in a glute program, stop trying to fit your ass into a leg press. Just get the stronger leg press and go do reverse hypers or do back extensions or do whatever. Do things that are going to put your glutes in a position where they're going to grow, and then use isolation work like kickbacks and cables, abduction, and things like that.
I freaking hate cable shit for the glutes, but that's exactly the point. Like, people, whenever clients finally film their leg presses for me, they have their feet high up the plate the way that they're taught from Instagram. And then as soon as I get them to do it the way that I do it, which is lower on the plate, narrower feet, they're moving so much more weight, and all of a sudden they feel their glutes.
Yeah.
It's because you finally got your glutes under a really big freaking stretch, which you don't do when they're at 90 degrees or less because you have them up the plate. So just do it so you can push the most weight possible. Then go do like a glute RDL or
it's like they say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if your glutes are the weakest link and you're doing leg press, your glutes are going to grow. And they'll go, well, my quads overpower it. I'm like, okay, if you get into a good stretch position with the glutes where your quads can't really do anything because your quads aren't going to extend the hip, go deep to the point where you get your glutes in there, and you're going to find out you're going to have to take a lot of weight off because you haven't been doing full range leg press, because the reason your quads have gotten so big is because you're basically only doing the range of motion where the quads have the best leverage, and you're not going deep enough to get the glutes in. But then that also necessitates they understand how to set the leg press, not just the feet, but set the back pad to be able to go far. Because, and here's another prime example of my gym. We have 2 leg presses. One of the leg presses has an adjustable back plate. Every dude that comes in there will put the back plate all the way up. If you put the back plate all the way up, you don't have any range of motion because you're already hinged. Let me see if I can do this. Let's say this is my leg press and I've got the back all the way up. There's no room for me to move my femur. The only thing I could go out here and try to go back there. Now, if I laid the bench back, now I have all this room. So people need to pay a lot of attention to how they're actually setting up the machine before they get on the machine. If you have the ability to adjust the back up and down, put it all the way down, as far down as it'll go, because that'll open up your hip and allow you to move into a really good amount of hip flexion, which means, great, now I can get my glutes in the mix. But if I'm sitting upright, my glutes aren't in a position to actually do anything. It's all quad. And I also don't have a lot of room to move the joint. The bones have to move around each other. So if I start to come back and I get a pinch in the front of my hip, or I just can't move it that far, there's no space for you to go. You're going to have to set yourself back up on that squat or that leg press, or you may have to rearrange the mechanics of the leg press so that it's actually set up to work the muscles you're looking for.
Yeah, and this is just going back to my bias of why I like RDLs and squat patterns and lunge patterns and split squat patterns and all that shit over freaking hip thrusts, because I like the length and range, and I like getting the really deep glute, and that is where the glute grows the most. For me, I actually find the upright leg press gets my glutes way more than the lower one. The lower one, I feel too much of my lower back, but I feel my glutes every single time I leg press.
What's the difference between you other people? You got really fucking long, like stupidly long femurs.
Oh, there we go again. See, form and the way that you set up the exercises, this comes back to why coaching and having someone that's one-on-one to adjust things to your body when you take form videos is so freaking important, because that is what's going to change your physique the most. Yeah. Having someone make your training so that you can really push your strength, push your performance. And eventually you will have performance goals because you start to fall in love with the process. And the other point I wanted to talk on with you, finally getting to it, it takes a long time to make 4 to 8 reps effective as hell, because most people don't have the neuromuscular efficiency to make those 4 to 8 reps count. And the same with just do 2 sets, just do 3 sets. Well, you need to be able to make the less more before the less becomes more. So talk a little bit more about that before we go into the myths section.
Yeah, I mean, this is I'm starting to see a new trend where it's like, okay, the new rep range is 4 to 8. Okay, what happened to 8 to 12? It's too fatiguing. Everybody's scared about fatigue, and I'm like, man, everybody just needs to calm the fuck down. So like, I love lower reps. It's always worked really well for me. But that's not going to work. You get a beginner needs repetition. They need exposure. They need what's called the law of repetition of effort to build a skill. So we need to understand that there is no perfect rep range for building a physique. That rep range is going to be different depending on what exercise you're doing, how much range of motion it has, whether it's a single joint or multi-joint movement. It's got your training age, your technical proficiency. So it's like you have to start with a good bit of volume of submaximal weight to build a skill first, because you can't build a skill while going like maximal. Like if somebody needs to do, let's say we have somebody doing 12 reps and we have to do it with technique, we're not working to complete failure. Because we don't want all that fatigue, especially in those end few reps. Eventually, we're going to progress to the point where they are going to full failure. And then the goal should be to be able to manage heavier weights under good technique and not have a meltdown, when you go, holy shit, that's heavy. So it's like, let's say we have somebody on 12 reps for a significant period of time, but we're leaving, say, 3 or 4 reps in the tank. That's what we used to call, now people call it reps in reserve or whatever. They've got to give it some fancy name, but we used to say just leave 2 reps in the tank. But let's say a new beginner, you're putting a 15 rep max on the bar, they're working the 12. So you got 3 reps in the tank. It's enough to start feeling it, but it's not enough to like have a ton of tension, but it's enough to practice the skill. And then over time, you go, all right, I want you to start loading more for that 12 to where 12 feels like you couldn't do another one. Like, so we're getting to the point where we teach them how to go all the way to at least good technical and speed concentric failure. Then it's like, okay, let's add some weight, but so use that same weight you were hitting with 12, but only go to 10. So then they get that. And then, okay, now we add more weight and we go to the 10 rep max, and you slowly get them down to that 4 to 8 rep range. But it takes time. Beginners shouldn't be doing anything super heavy. They should be learning the skill of how to move the bar correctly, move their body correctly. And there's a lot of different ways to look at it. A lot of people will say now, well, the higher reps are too fatiguing. We should just do low reps. Okay, well, what if the person hasn't built the skill yet? And a lot of beginners can't tap into high threshold motor units anyways because they're not well trained enough. So they're going to need time to learn how to activate those high threshold motor units that create the most hypertrophy and strength. So there's a break-in period where they have to get there. And then if you think, okay, what about the exercise? Would you do a 4-rep max on a leg extension? Yeah, if you hate your knees, go for it. But there are certain exercises that aren't going to be appropriate for heavyweight low reps. Are you going to do, let's look at the back squat. Would you do 12 reps in a back squat? You could, but it's probably not the best rep range over time. It is when you're a beginner, but when you get decently strong, yeah, that is going to be fucking fatiguing. So a leg press is probably going to be more appropriate for a 12 to 15 when you're strong, and a 4 to 8 is going to be more appropriate for a back squat. So like these details and this nuance matters of, if I'm going to pick a rep range, I need to make sure that the exercise fits that, the client fits that, and it's conducive to the goals. Because if you just want hypertrophy, you got a lot of rep ranges you could do. And if people go, well, you'll get too fatigued if you do high reps. Well, there's an easy way to overcome that. Get in better fucking shape. You're just too out of shape for the rep range, which means that we can use, let's say you do 12 to 15 reps. And you're like, fuck, man, that's destroying me. I'm huffing and puffing. Great. We're going to stay on that rep range for a while because you're still going to get hypertrophy there, but we're going to get you in better shape and work capacity. If you want to get really fucking strong, the only way to do that is to lift heavy ass weight. So if you want hypertrophy, but you also want to get really fucking like Ruby level strong, you're going to have to lift lower reps and heavier weight. But it really depends on what the outcome is, right? Beginners need to get in shape and build muscle. When they're when they're decently well trained, now the focus should be building muscle and building strength and maintaining their endurance, like maintaining their ability to do repeated efforts under a specific load.
Parking that out of shape thing for when we talk about cardio and conditioning later, but this is why it doesn't pay to ask someone about what they're doing with their training, because it doesn't mean you're going to get their results. Someone asked me what my optimal leg day is, and mine is 3 sets of 5 exercises max, maybe 4, but 5 exercises max, between 4 to 6 reps for the first 3, maybe up to 8. And then maybe the last one I'll do for 8 to 12 reps.
Yeah.
To me, I rather 85% of my training be below 8 reps, like the 4 to 8 reps, and only 15%, if that, be 8 to 12 reps, because I can make more less. I mean, I can make less more.
Yeah.
And that is something to know as well. And people don't it's harder to know how many reps are left in the tank the more reps that you have.
That's right.
As a range.
They also have to realize too, you're an elite level. No matter what your strength is right now, you have been, and I have been in the past. I'm not anymore, but at an elite level of strength. And we got there lifting heavy ass weights, which means heavy weights is probably going to do best for us because of how strong we have been in the past and our training age. But that doesn't mean if I tell somebody 3-to-1 wave loading gives me the best results, that doesn't mean that that's the best program for everybody, because it took me years to be able to get anything out of 3-to-1 wave loading, right? It took me years to be able to grow significant amounts of strength and muscle with triples. But I think if somebody was like, hey, Luke, what is your optimal leg day or chest day or whatever, I'm going to have to go, well, let me stop you. What is the outcome we're looking for? Because my training is variable depending on what I'm trying to get out of my stuff. So like right now I'm doing a protein sparing modified fast. I'm doing sets of 12 to 15. I wouldn't normally do that. I'm only doing it because I need that to squeeze out all the glycogen so I can maintain ketosis until my refeed, until I switch phases into a different phase of dieting. So it's like, I know, normally, you know me, I hate, I've told you many times in the past, if I do traditional hypertrophy stuff of like 8 to 15 reps, I just get smaller. Now, if I stick around 4 to 8 reps, that's where I actually grow. But that's also a factor of being a former powerlifter, bodybuilder, strongman, 30-something years of training, 318 kilo squat, almost 500-pound bench press, 730-pound deadlift, blah, 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 blah. Like, am I designed to get a response out of that? Is that just the way I'm built? Maybe you and I are like just fast twitch monsters and we are genetically built for that. Or maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's also a nurture part as well. We train to that level at some point. So that's what our brain remembers and that's what our body remembers. That's what our motor neurons remember. That's what our muscle nuclei remember. So they go, oh, I remember this. It's time to grow because we're getting back into what we used to be doing, right? But everybody needs to understand that there is a ton of rep ranges you could do. Just like there's a ton of exercises, you need to base what you're going to do on how much time you have, what training age and what level you're at, what your outcome or what you want to get out of the training, and also what you like. Like, so I train guys who love high time under tension, high volume. Like they fucking love the burn and they grow on that shit. I can't think of anything fucking worse than that. I would rather hit a hard five rep set and then rest 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, do an antagonistic muscle, rest another 3, 4, 5 minutes, but if you're going to lift in if you're going to lift at 5 reps with heavy loads, you're going to need a lot of rest. So that's going to chew up a lot of your training time. So if you want to do a ton of different exercises, that's not the style. But if you want to specialize on 3 exercises and 4 exercises in a workout and you want to lift heavy, you can make it work. There's just so many different things to think about when we're designing programs.
I love that because it really does emphasize that program design isn't something that's just throw shit on a piece of paper to see what sticks. And in so many Facebook groups, there are still so many women asking, is this a good program? And it's got like every single freaking leg exercise that you can think of on one day.
Program for what? And for who?
What are you trying to achieve there? Like, you can stay in the gym the longest. Many of us don't.
I don't think people, and honestly, you've been a student of mine for a long time. You see all the detail that goes in the way I program, how I teach programming. I don't think other coaches who haven't been through Muscle Nerds training, I don't think they understand, like, when I talk about program design, my program design and their program design, we're not talking about the same thing. Like, because a lot of guys just go to bodybuilding.com and pull a fucking program out. I'm sitting here with a calculator and an abacus, and I've got scientific NASA astronaut calculations. And when I write a program, it's a really fucking involved deal. It's not just like throwing shit at the wall. And that's what program design should be. So I think people have a misconception about what proper program design is. And they think it's like this, that I could write a program in like 5 minutes. I can write if you want to go work out with me, you want me to write a workout in 5 minutes, I can write the workout. Now, if you go,
program is completely different. People underestimate what goes into good coaching. And I would say that anyone who's been through Muscle Nerds probably is like me in that we overthink every single little thing I overthink every single program that I do because of you. Like, I never overthought my programming until Muscle Nerds. Now it's overthinking everything. Because there is art to the way that it all works. Yeah. Like, you don't need to do more in the gym to see results. You just need better programming. And if you look at most people that have the body that you want, they're stronger than you. Like, strength really is the mother variable. Sorry, I had to take that from you, but it really is. Like,
I think so.
It really is so true. Get strong and you will eventually see the results you want. But we definitely can't forget like the body fat part of this.
We won't. But
we're going to go into after you finish your little last on the training.
Yeah, just that last kind of just to tie that one off is you'll talk to a lot of people that maybe they got in the industry for the wrong reasons. And they go, well, it doesn't really matter. You just do a program. Everything works. Just do a standard hypertrophy program. And I'm like, okay. But my programming will work much faster than that. And people don't pay me to write them a workout. They write me they pay me to write a specific training program for a specific goal, and they want to have an experience, or else people wouldn't pay me the money that they pay me. Like you and I and any accomplished long-term Muscle Nerds coach, if you go into a Fitness First, you go into Good Life, go into these gyms, those coaches are not the same as the people that are in our network. They do not think the same. They don't write the same. They don't have the same knowledge. Do not associate us with those people because they do not care, and you will not have the experience with them that you have with Muscle Nerds coaches, 100%, because we understand that we are professionals at program design. and that people are paying us money to be professional and write something that's truly bespoke for them to drive them to the goals they want. So we're not monkey shitting on our hands thrown at the wall. Every single thing that we've put on that program is there for a highly specific purpose that's going to feed into the next phase, the next phase, the next phase, the next phase, on and on and on. So it's like, I don't think people I can't reinforce that anymore, because people do not understand the difference between somebody is truly professional, elite level at program design versus the other 99% of coaches in the world.
Yeah, and this is kind of where it's like, if you have a specific training goal, then we are going to program for it. If you don't, then we're just going to program you with the best hypertrophy program that we have that is going to get you the results. And if you follow that and you train close enough to failure and you know how to push yourself, you're going to get the physique results that you want. Have a specific goal, then that takes the next level of programming. And that's where our brain goes to overdrive. But the body fat part, before we go into people blaming their diet or their training for their lack of body fat, I would say the most overlooked factor that sabotages people's progress is, if people are watching the video, this will be funny, is cortisol. It's insulin. It's all this stuff that your chronic stress is holding you back because your cortisol is fucking up your gut and your hormones, and now you have moon face and cortisol dysregulation. Can we just say first that I was being a complete idiot just then, but I would say that a lot of the shit online is the stuff that holds people back, because they then get confused. They blame cortisol. Where does cortisol fit into this? Where does gut health fit into this? And what is the truth behind insulin and insulin resistance? What is the truth?
I mean, look, all that stuff, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, because it does, but most of the people talking about stuff have no fucking idea what they're fucking talking about. And in a lot of cases, people online have shit to sell you. So if you come to somebody with a problem, whatever they think they're an expert at, that's what they're going to tell you the problem is. So if someone is an expert with cortisol, or they're a semi-quasi guru that they've named themselves the cortisol king or whatever, they're going to tell you that everything that's wrong with you is related to cortisol. If they're a carnivore guy and, you know, a low carb guy, they're going to say carbs are the evil thing and it's all about the insulin. And they're going to try to convince you that the problem is one little thing, when the problem is actually it's multifactorial of a bunch of different shit that's interplaying with themselves, because they're all of these things they all work together and they work against each other. And the problem really, like cortisol is really realistically a downstream thing, right? So if we move upstream from that, there are other things happening with adrenaline and noradrenaline, with histamine. We can relate that to gut. We can look at the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system, look at the autonomic nervous system, enteric nervous system. Like all of these things don't get fucked up by themselves. So if you have a fucked up gut, you probably have a nervous system issue. You could have a hormonal issue. You could have a brain issue. You could have a early childhood trauma issue. You could have a lifestyle issue and a sleep issue. There are all these things that are feeding into this. You don't just get a fucked up gut, right? You don't just get poor insulin management. You don't just get fucked up cortisol response. Like this stuff doesn't happen in isolation. It happens as part of a huge matrix. So these people that are trying to tell you that their puzzle piece is the one thing that's going to fix you, they're all full of shit, because there's a bunch of puzzle pieces that need to be put in that puzzle to make things more clear. So what people need to do is, and I'll say this, probably the number one thing that's holding people back has nothing to do with a hormone, has nothing to do with their gut. It has to do with themselves. People are the ones that are holding themselves back, because they won't get their shit together. They won't do what they need to do. They won't make a complete lifestyle change. They skip workouts. They fuck up on their diet. They try to jump in and do stuff too aggressively instead of easing into it. They get bad advice, and then they don't have patience. So if they haven't seen the effects in 3 days, they switch to something else. And then in 3 days, they switch to something else. So now it's like, I've tried everything. You've tried like 24 different things for 3 days each. How about you try something for 6 months, and then don't just throw it in the trash. Try to figure out what part of that's working, what part's not, and just stop doing the stuff that's not working, keep doing the stuff that's working, and then layer something else on top of that. It's insanity. Like I have people who are obese, like morbidly obese, and they're like, I just can't lose weight. All right. I'll put them on a 3-day fast, water fast with a little bit of fish oil and a multivitamin. They lose a heap of weight. I'm like, I thought you couldn't lose weight. Well, it's because I didn't eat anything. Well, so you're saying a deficit works. Yeah. I'm like, okay, so now we don't need to do 100% deficit. Can we do a 25 to 30% deficit and make sure you don't miss your training sessions and just understand that it's going to just take a little bit of time. But I've shown you that a deficit makes you lose weight. So now you just have to have that deficit over an extended period of time to lose the 100 fucking kilos of food that you've eaten in the past that you couldn't get rid of that's now stored on your body.
I have something amazing to say after this podcast, but that part that you just said there, I completely had a little laughing moment because this is what I've been telling all my girls this week because my coach put me onto, I'm seeing, like I have a coach who's a psychologist, and anyway, I'm reading The Mountain Is You. It's funny, there is no mountain. The mountain is you. You are the one that's stopping yourself. And it is so true. Like, it is the best book. Anyone listening to this, please get the book. Like, it wasn't until I was around 70 to 77% through the book that I'm like, fuck, hello. Like, most of it was just like, yeah, this can help me help my clients. But as soon as I got to there, I'm like, yep, this is my section of the book. But we are always our own mountain. And that is what I wanted to get at with this. We are always the ones stopping ourselves. And regardless, I will always say, our job as a coach is to stop you doing dumb shit. Yeah. And it's not that it's dumb shit because it's not your fault. You're scared of eating more food. So then as soon as you start to eat more food, you panic. The pants get tight, whatever it is. And then you second guess everything, then put yourself back into a deficit. And then you end up spinning your wheels. Like, you're stopping yourself. Ali was stopping herself. Everyone stops themselves until they had enough and they finally just go all in. And as soon as you go all in, like, I started the podcast off with this. Luke and I know that you're going to get results if you follow what we tell you to do. But it's just that most of us...
You have to follow it. You have to actually do it.
Literally, like consistently, not just on weekdays and not just...
Yeah, and the thing is, like, people need to understand you're either in or you're out. Like, if you want to get the results that we tell you can get, you're either fully in or you're fully out. If you're halfway in, you're going to get halfway results. So you have to make a decision whether you're ready to be fully committed or not. So if you get fully committed, we're good. If you want to be half committed, that's okay. But just understand that our timeline has now exponentially increased. You'll agree. Am I a nice coach, or am I I'm a dick? I can be a real dick to my clients.
There's a difference between being nice and kind. You are a dick, but you're kind. Because if it wasn't for you, I would not be where I am. If it wasn't for you, many people wouldn't be where they are. But that's because you call us out on our shit. Yeah. And that's being kind. And most people aren't even kind to themselves. They fool themselves into these very things. And it's exactly what you said. And that's the thing. And
the reason I'm asking you this, because to me, I'm a coach. I'm an old school coach. Like, when I was playing sports growing up, they called you names. They kicked you in the ass. They weren't nice, but they did it because they wanted to win and because they cared about your performance. They cared about you. Like, they cared about you, right? So that's the way I'd always been coached when I was an athlete. So that's the way I coach. So I'll be someone's biggest cheerleader when they do the right thing, and I'll be fully invested with you if you're doing the right thing. But if you're fucking around, I'm not that interested anymore. And I'm going to tell you to get your shit together. And I had a client yesterday. He's, I've trained him for, 4 or 5 years, a long fucking time. And he's just never gotten as lean as he wants to get, but he fucks around. He doesn't hit all his training sessions. He doesn't train as hard as he should. He's trying to find quick fixes. He doesn't sleep enough. He takes on too much work. He's stressed out all the time. He drinks a little bit too much. He's never, ever followed a diet consistently in the time that I've trained him. And so it's about, once a year he comes around and says, hey, can we really get on the nutrition? And I'm like, are you finally, I'm going to write all this stuff out and I'm going to orchestrate it. Are you finally going to follow your nutrition? Coach, I'm going to do it this time. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, bro, this is like the 12th time we've gone through this. Are you actually going to do it this time? But he has this understanding that he's basically the captain of his own ship, and I'm just the navigator. So I'm going to tell him where to go. But if he doesn't steer the fucking ship the right way, we're probably going to run up on the reef. And so I try to coach everybody that way and saying, look, if you just follow the map, and don't do any detours. We're going to get there. But if the more detours you take, the longer this is going to happen. And he goes, oh, I just feel like my arms and my shoulders, they're just real soft. It doesn't even look like I lift. I'm like, yeah, because you're fat. And he's like, holy shit. I'm like, no, I mean, let's just say what it is. If you want me to be politically correct, I'll just say, okay, well, you're still fairly gravitationally challenged, right? But let's just call a spade a spade. You're still fat. You're not going to have muscle tone because you're still fat, and you miss your sessions, and you don't eat enough to fill your muscles out, and you don't sleep enough to recover, so you're inflamed. But it's like the kind of the whole point to this is that, you know, if you follow and do what you say you're going to do with a program, you're going to see the results. But you also have to have patience and understand that you're going to have to do this for a significant period of time if you want to see significant success. You know, like he loses 10 kilos. I'm like, I'm fucking stoked for you. He goes, well, my arms still look bad. My shoulders look bad. Yeah, because you're still fat. You still have probably another fucking 20 kilos to lose, right? Like, I'm going to cheerlead for you, but I'm also going to slap you in the face with a little bit of reality. You got a lot more fat to lose than you think you do.
I love this. We're going to touch on that part very soon, but I like that you just said you don't eat enough. You can't starve fat loss. You need to fuel fat loss, which is
no, you can. You can. No, you can. You can start
weight loss.
You can start. No, you can start fat loss, but you're going to lose muscle too.
Yeah, so like, I said fat loss / weight loss. There's a difference.
Yeah, but we also say, like, if you weight loss, you're going to lose fat. Fat loss, you're going to lose fat. Now the difference is, are you going to retain that muscle? So that's a big difference, right? Because we'll look at all the people taking all the GLP-1 drugs now, like Ozempic, Trazepam, all that stuff. There's a lot of information about how it causes muscle wasting. Yeah, it does cause muscle wasting. Why? Because people don't eat enough protein and they starve themselves because the whole point of the drug, like the main emphasis for this classification of drugs, is to make you not hungry. So then people just don't eat. Okay, so they put themselves in caloric deficit. They lose tremendous amounts of weight. But the problem is, when they don't eat, they also don't eat enough protein, and they don't train. And so they reckon, 25 to 35% of what they're losing is muscle. And like you said before, muscle is precious. Muscle takes a long time to build. You don't want to lose that when you're dieting. So the thing is, like, yeah, you can starve yourself and you'll lose a heap of fat, but you're also going to lose a heap of muscle, which means your body composition is not going to look any better. So if you look at, do you remember, did you guys over here, you got lots of Subways here. Did you ever have that Subway commercial with Jared? Like the Jared guy who ate one foot-long Subway sandwich every day, and he lost like 250 pounds. But the thing is,
I don't watch TV, so no.
Okay, so if anybody would remember this, it's like basically he only ate like one Subway sandwich a day or something, and he went from like 350 pounds, like 150. He lost a tremendous amount of weight just starving himself, but he didn't look any different. He went from being just big, obesely fat to small and fat. He didn't look better. He didn't look like he felt better. And now he's in prison because he's a pedophile.
Say that part again, please. Please say that part again. He didn't look any different. He just shrunk. This is the reality for most women. And that's why I love what you just said, because you can't just starve yourself into a better body composition. You cannot starve yourself into a better I should have said, you need to fuel. You need to fuel body composition.
That's a better way of saying it. You can't starve yourself to good body composition. All right. You can starve yourself for lots of fat loss. You can starve yourself for weight loss. But keep in mind, when you do that, especially when you're not training hard, you're going to lose a lot of muscle. So your body composition is either going to stay the same or it's going to get worse. And all you're going to see is that you've lost a ton of fat and muscle, and you have seen the scale go down. But then you're going to look at yourself. You're going to get out of the shower and look at yourself in the mirror and go, God, I look terrible. I look like a coat hanger.
And you also said there, a significant period of time, you'll thank yourself. And yeah, trying to find quick fixes is the easiest thing to do because it just takes so long and it's annoying. I know, but you're going to thank yourself later. And you also said half-ass results. Like you need to be all in. You can't want all in results if you're only going half-ass. So if you're only willing to go this much, as in like halfway or whatever way you're willing to go, then you just need to adjust your expectations and take a step back, because that is when you start spinning your wheels, wondering why you're not getting results. And then you blame the program, blame the coach, whatever it is. It's like, no, you just need to readjust your expectations and get just start with where you're at. There's nothing wrong with that. You just need to know where you are.
There's an epidemic going on right now that's super visual for people to see. Go look at all the Hollywood celebrities that are looking horrible because they're all getting on Ozempic, they're all getting on GLP-1 drugs, they're all gaunt in the face, they've all lost all this muscle, their clothes are hanging off of them, and everybody's going, what the hell is going on? They're all taking these drugs and they're trying to do it really quickly the wrong way, and then they look terrible. Yeah, they've lost heaps of weight, but they look awful. And that is not like, that's not what people come to us to look like. If you want to look like that, cool. Go to your doctor and get some fucking Ozempic. I'm not coaching you because I don't believe in that.
Thank you. Can people please just stop defaulting to fat loss 24/7?
And that was the end of part 2 with Luke Leaman. Stay tuned for all things cortisol, insulin, and pretty much the shit that everyone's here for. Luke dispelling the myths and helping you with your long-term body transformation with what really matters.